When you're creating music and sharing it with the world, you're going to inevitably run into failures, roadblocks, setbacks, and challenges. You're going to submit your work to record labels, they're going to turn you down. You're going to write music that you think sucks. You're going to get trolled. You're going to get passed over for gigs. These types of things you can't avoid, they just happen, that's life. But how you feel about these events will dramatically affect how or if you bounce back. Unfortunately, I see far too many musicians, when they have a setback, feel despair and frustration, and they just let the wind get sucked out of their sails. I see some of the emotional intensity that comes up when you don't get what you want or when you feel rejected. And I see a lot of people turning to destructive coping mechanisms, numbing themselves out by using alcohol, weed, or other drugs. Or I see people get lost in overindulgence in sex or overstimulation by binging series on Netflix. Or I see them get mired up in procrastination and perfectionism. And it just breaks my heart to see talented and creative people get taken out like this. So the reason I'm creating this video is to give you guys some tools to be able to handle the intensity of things that come up like this so that you guys can stay resilient and that you don't get wiped out and you can keep creating. I've been coaching musicians professionally now for about 10 years. And one thing I can say unequivocally is that little catchphrases like just stay positive and power through and crush it and, just keep on going, they just don't cut it because they contain no inherent how. They might make you feel good in the moment that you're saying them, but how do you stay positive when it feels like at every turn you're just running into a brick wall? How do you maintain your motivation when you feel like throwing in the towel and giving up, when you feel like your goals are so far away that you're never going to reach them? So what I actually want to share with you guys is a proven system. In the time that I've been working with musicians, I've had a chance to personally test and see work what is effective. And I'm going to share with you guys a short list of some tools and techniques that will help you guys to stay resilient, help you to stay on the path towards your goals. If you guys resonate with what I'm about to share, I'll also link some information on my coaching programs below if you guys want to dive deeper into this stuff or work with me personally. But for now, let's get into it. Technique number 1 is to change your language. Our words that we choose to use are extremely powerful because every single word carries with it an emotional charge. And the word failure carries a very negative and powerful emotional charge. And it usually drags along a couple friends called shame and despair that can make you feel even worse. So what I like to do is, instead of labeling an event as a failure, to change the word that I'm using to diminish its impact. Some of my favorite go-tos are a setback, a challenge, a roadblock. Or you could get a little fun with it. You could call it a miss, an oops, a fluke, a derp. Or two of my personal favorites are to call it a lesson or an opportunity to learn. And the reason why I like those last two is because a lesson and an opportunity both carry inherent value in the word. What I'd like you guys to do is experiment with changing the language that you're using. You're going to use languaging hacks, and this comes from a larger framework called quantum languaging, which basically is using different words to shift how you feel about a particular event and how you respond to it. So give this a shot. Next time you feel like you've got something that happened that's a failure, try calling it a little setback, and really just notice how that shifts the way you're feeling about this. And please know as well that this doesn't just apply to your music. This can equally be implemented in other areas of your life as well. So give it a shot. Technique number 2 is reframing failure. In order to keep our creative fires going in the face of setbacks, we need to change the way we look at things. And reframing is a great way to do that. Reframing is a technique from neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP. And basically, the concept is, if you have a painting and you have a frame around that painting, the frame substantially impacts the way that art looks. And if you change the frame, you really change the way that the whole thing is perceived. Same thing with a camera, and you have lenses that can be swapped. You can have a camera and a subject, and if you swap lenses and put a new lens on the camera, the entire composition of that image shifts and changes. So the challenge here is that a lot of people are looking at events in their lives through the failure frame. and bringing in all of that negative charge and those negative emotions. But if you swap the lens on your camera and instead put on the curiosity lens, then you can begin to learn from failure. And then failure actually becomes really useful feedback. So just like we study successful people and we reverse engineer the patterns that led to their success, and then if we can figure those out, we can recreate success, well, failure also has a recipe, a pattern, and a structure to it. But if we pass over failure and just power through and try and forget about it, we never actually have the time or the opportunity to learn from it. And if we can learn the pattern and the structure of how we failed, then we can prevent it from happening again. And if we don't, it's likely that it'll just keep repeating itself. So the next time you have a setback, try to swap on your curiosity lens, your curiosity frame, and begin to learn from that very valuable information. Try and determine what got you there so that you can avoid it next time. Technique number 3 is separating fact from story. Feeling like we failed is bad enough on its own, but oftentimes there's a second issue. We'll invent a story, oftentimes unconsciously, about what that failure means about us as a person, and that causes even more distress. So this brings in a Buddhist metaphor that I wanted to share with you called the second arrow. So the first arrow is outside of our control. There's some type of triggering event, like say you send your track up and put it up on SoundCloud and you get a whole bunch of hate on the track. That's unavoidable. Things like that are outside of your control. That's the first arrow, and it causes pain. But then you may start to tell yourself a story, again, underneath the radar of your conscious mind, and it might go a little something like this. Man, I really suck at writing music, and now everybody else knows it too. I just am not good enough. I'm not good enough to do this as a career, and I should give up. Or I just don't have what it takes, and I'm never going to learn. And you can see how when that stuff is running in the background, it can have far more of a detrimental impact. And that's what's known as the second arrow. The second arrow is suffering, and it's self-inflicted. And that's the heartbreaking part about it, is we have these simple triggering events, the first arrow that causes the pain, and then we cause ourselves all this additional suffering. So what can you do about it? And what I recommend is being able to monitor and catch the story, to be able to catch the second arrow before it hurts us. And how you can do that is by bringing in some awareness to that internal chatter, realizing that at any point in time, you're going to have a voice in your head. Might be quiet, might be loud. And if you can monitor that and bring some awareness to it in real time, you can realize how detrimental and how crazy and untrue that stuff is. So if you can begin to disentangle the triggering event from the story that you're creating in your mind about it, and instead replace that narrative with something more gentle for yourself, something that has a little bit of compassion for yourself. Like, you know what? I'm just learning, and I'm doing great so far, and it's going to take some time. Yeah, I got turned down by the first record label that I submitted my music to, but you know what? There's thousands more labels, and you know how many people get their first track signed that they send in? Almost nobody. The only way that that's going to happen is by continuing to create. It'll probably be my 10th, my 15th, my 50th track. So you can change your story when you're aware that it's happening. Give that a shot. Technique number 4 is creating a mental success movie. There's something that many triumphant and resilient people do, and that's that they have a short memory for failure and a long memory for their successes. Now, unfortunately, most of us are doing the exact opposite. We're obsessing over our failures and replaying them in our mind over and over and over again. Aside from doing this once through the curiosity frame to be able to learn from the feedback of failure, this just isn't constructive. An author that I follow is Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he created a book called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. He discovered through years of research that when we replay these past negative experiences in our mind, that our brain and body release the same stress hormones and neurotransmitters as if that event was happening to us again in real time. So imagine how destructive and stressful it is when we're replaying these mental movies of our failures in the past. Now, the silver lining in this realization is that if we can change our state by thinking in a negative way, we can also change our state in a positive way. And that's the essence of this technique. It's the mental success movie. To do this, you create a simple compilation of events from your past where you felt empowered, fulfilled, where you had a win, where you took a step forwards towards your dreams and your goals. Build a mental movie of those things and make it vivid by engaging and involving all of your senses. What did it look like? How did you feel in that moment? What smells or tastes or sensations were involved in that memory? And use that to make it as real and as engaging as possible. I like to enhance things by using an anchor. An anchor is a little physical thing that you do. For me, I touch these two fingers together. And that anchor will help you to engage that positive state. So for me, whenever I have something happen where I feel confident, I feel a sense of accomplishment, I feel fulfilled and happy, and I achieve something, I'll press these two fingers together. That's my anchor. You could use something else. You could put your hand on your belly, you could touch your earlobe, whatever that is for you, but a physical sensation that's going to help to create a neuro association between those positive feelings and that sensation. So what you can do with your mental success movie when you create it is strengthen it with your anchor every time you achieve something, every time you take a step forwards towards one of your goals and you feel great. And then you can use it to your benefit. So right before you go into the studio for a production session, right before you step on stage to play a gig, or before you step into an important business meeting, you can replay your mental success movie and engage your anchor, and it'll completely shift your state. So I really hope that that benefits you. It's incredibly powerful. I hope you've gotten a lot out of this video and these techniques. I just want to give credit where credit's due and say that I didn't come up with this stuff. I've learned these techniques through my own research by reading books and taking coaching programs, and I wanted to give a nod to the originators of these techniques. I've put some links below the video with some additional resources so you guys can follow up on that stuff. If what we've talked about today vibes with you and you'd like to make some big shifts and big changes with your career, your music, your life, feel free to check out the links below to my coaching programs and come and work with me personally. Or just pop by Warp Academy and check out what we have to offer. I'm so glad you tuned in for this, and I hope that these techniques are of great service to you. Feel free to hit me up in the comments and subscribe if we're not linked up already. I wish you all the best with your music, and I hope we connect again really soon. Be well.